welcome to the sew along for the new Jessica pattern. This is a Mimi G Style and So Def collaboration, so if you don't already have the pattern, you can visit my blog, mimigstyle.com. The direct link to this post is in the description box below, and there you will find a way to access and purchase the pattern, and then you can come back and sew along with me. Okay, so I have obviously printed out the pattern, taped it together, and cut out my pattern pieces. If you are unsure on how to do that, there is a video linked in the blog post, which is linked in the description box below, so you can go ahead and review that if you need to. Here are the pieces you're going to need. You're going to need the back of the skirt and, of course, the front. You're also going to need to cut out the facings. You're going to have a front facing and a back facing. You will also need to interface both of these pieces. Then you have your front band, and you're going to be cutting out 2 and also interfacing 2. You're going to have your side front and your center front pieces, your side back and your center back piece. You're going to have your straps, and you're going to have your pocket. Now this is optional, but I am going to show you how to attach these to your skirt if you choose to do that. Okay, I've cut and interfaced all of my pieces, and now we're going to start constructing our dress. Okay, so we're going to start with our back pieces. We have our center back piece, which was cut on the fold, and then we have our side pieces. And so now we're going to pin right sides facing, and then pin the other side back. And now I want you to set this aside and grab your front pieces. So we have our center front and then our side fronts. And so we're going to pin one side front to one front. So now grab your back pieces again, and we're going to sew using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're going to back stitch at the beginning. And at the end. And then do the other side the same way. Now if you have a serger, go ahead and serge off your seam allowances. Okay, so go ahead and grab the other pieces that we pinned together, our center front and our side front, and we're going to sew those together. Again, using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the beginning. Now you're going to go ahead and do the other center front and side front the same way, and then again serge off your raw edges. Okay, so as you can see, I went ahead and serged my seam allowances. If you don't have a serger, you can totally just finish off the edges of your fabric using the zigzag stitch on your sewing machine if your fabric unravels. This is an ICAT and it unravels quite a bit, so I need to make sure that I'm serging my seam allowances. Now I did trim off as I serged just a little bit, and it's about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance now, but it's nice and finished, and I went ahead and pressed my seams. Now we're going to go ahead and pin our front to our back. So we're going to, with right sides facing of course, pin the sides. And now we're going to sew our side seams, again using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning. At the end, go ahead and serge your raw edge or zigzag, whichever you have, and then do the other side the same way and press your seams to one side. Okay, so now we have our front bodice constructed mostly, and now we're going to do our straps so that we can attach our straps to our bodice and then attach our facing to our bodice. I'm going to set this aside for just a minute. I'm going to fold my straps in half and I'm going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to do that for both, leaving the short ends open. Okay, I went ahead and turned my straps to the right side and I gave them a good press. And so now we're going to position them along the seam line. So not our side seams, but the seam between our center back and the side back. Now, I want you to go ahead, pin it there. And I want you to baste across the top and then try this on and adjust your front straps however much you need to. So what you're going to do is you're going to pin it along our princess seam that we have here and then try it on. If you need to make the straps shorter, then go ahead and take up however much you need to and repin it. If you need to make them longer, then you can just go ahead and let out a little bit and then try it on. Once it fits, then go ahead and baste both of them down in place. Okay, I went ahead and tried my straps on and then I basted them in place. And so I went ahead and basted across the front as well. And now I want you to go ahead and set this aside and grab your facings. So we're going to take our back facing, and with right sides facing, we're going to pin them to the side. This is our front. This is going to be our side seam. Then I want you to go ahead and stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now if you are serging, then I want you to go ahead and serge along the entire bottom of your facing so that on the inside it'll be nice and finished. Okay, so now that we have our facing sewn, which just is funny, that looks like a thong, but it's not. And I have gone ahead and I have serged the entire bottom so that it's nice and clean. And now we're going to go ahead and pin it to our bodice. So grab your bodice. And I want you to make sure that your straps are out of the way. Okay, so put them down. And we're going to start on one side, right side's facing. And we're going to pin along the front. Match up your side seams. Continue pinning until you have the entire facing pinned in place. Now we're going to sew using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way across the top and down the front. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and we're still using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to back stitch here and pivot. Now we're going to go ahead and press our seam allowance towards our facing, and then we're going to understitch. Okay, so we're going to be stitching along our facing, making sure our seam allowances are towards the facing so that we can stitch through the facing and seam allowances as we're sewing right along the edge. I'm going to try and go up as far as I can. Then we want to do the same thing across the top. Now go ahead and press your facings to the inside. Okay, now that we have our bodice and our facing done, I went ahead and added my label. And now we're going to go ahead and sew our skirt together at our side seams. So your back piece was cut on the fold. And so we're just going to place one front with right sides facing over one back, and we're going to pin our side seams together. And then you're going to pin the other one. So this is just a straight stitch, so go ahead to your machine and sew down your side seams using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do both side seams. Then you're going to serge your seam allowance and press your seams to one side. Okay, so now we have our front panels sewn to our back panel, and so what we're going to do now is our pocket. So before we gather our skirt, I want you to go ahead and finish your pocket. So all you're going to do is fold under 1 inch and you're going to sew along the edge. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Then we're going to turn it over and pin it to our skirt. Okay, so I folded 1 inch along that fold line that's on the pattern. So my right sides are facing each other. And I'm going to stitch, back stitch. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And now you're going to go ahead and turn this to the right side. And I want you to press along the top, and I want you to press along the entire sides and bottom 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to place my pocket 6 inches down from the top. I'm going to put a little pin there. You might want yours lower or higher depending on how short or long your arms are, so you can totally just pin it in place and test it out. And then also, I want my pocket to sort of gape when I wear it. I don't want it to sit flat on my dress. That's optional. You can pin it just the way you see it. I'm centering my pocket on my seam line, and so you can go ahead and just stitch all the way around if you want a flat pocket. Like I said, I want mine to gape a bit, so I'm going to pinch out about 1 inch at the top. And I'm going to pin. That way that will always sort of gape out when I wear my dress. And then the bottom will just go ahead and pin flat. You're going to pin the other pocket the same way. And now we're going to stitch close to the edge. Okay, starting at the top of the pocket, we're going to back stitch. You can sew your other pocket the same way. Okay, now that we have our pocket attached, we're going to go ahead and do the hem of our skirt because we need to have that finished before we attach our front band. So what you're going to do is go ahead and finish the raw edge of your hem either with a serge or a zigzag stitch, and then you're going to turn over 1.25 inches and you're going to sew your hem. After you do that, come back with me and I'll show you how to attach our front band. Okay, I went ahead and finished my hem, and now we're going to go ahead and put on our front band. So the right side of the skirt is facing me, and I went ahead on the wrong side of my band and pressed 3/8 of an inch along one long side. And now we're going to pin our band to our skirt, but instead of doing it right sides facing, we're actually going to pin the right side of the band to the wrong side of the skirt. And now we're going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Your band should be extending from the bottom of your skirt. You're going to pin your other band to the other front the same way. Okay, going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, and now while we're still here, I want you to take your, okay, now we're going to fold our band. So with your seam allowance facing away from the band, you're going to fold it just like that, and we're going to stitch across the bottom. We're going to go ahead and trim that, but we're going to turn it to the right side, and we're going to press this in place. Okay, so now I want you to press your seam allowance towards your band the way I've done here, and then you're going to fold it over so that the fold is just past your stitching line, and you can go ahead and pin if you need to. Then at the bottom, just make sure that you have everything tucked in. And now we're going to go to the machine and we're going to stitch close to the folded edge. And you're going to do the same thing for both sides. Okay, you're going to back stitch. You're going to do the other one the same way. Okay, so now that your band is on, you have a nice clean finish on the inside and a really great clean finish on the outside. And now you're going to do some gathering. So you should know how to gather. You're going to create 2 rows of basting stitches, and then we're going to pull those strings to create the gathers. Then we can attach our skirt to our bodice. Okay, so I have my skirt mostly all gathered, and I just have this little last part to do, and so I thought I'd show you really quickly how I like to do it. So what I do is I just place whatever I'm trying to match up, so the gathered skirt, my side seam to the center front, to the side seam to the center front of my bodice, and then I just pull my threads, and then I just kind of measure out to see how much more. Now I'm not counting my facing, right, because that's going to be folded onto itself. So we just want the center front end of the top. And when it looks just about right, then I go ahead and I tie off my threads. And I gather my skirt in sections. So I do the front bodice, and then I do the center back. And that just makes it a little easier for me to gather chunks at a time. And just adjust your gathers. And now we're going to pin it. And again, we're going to pin in batches. So first I'm going to pin at my side seams. So I'm going to match the side seam of the skirt with the side seam of the bodice. And I'm going to pin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open out my facing, as you can see, and I'm going to place the edge of my band right along that seam line. And then I'm going to fold over my facing. And then I'm going to pin through all my layers. And then if I need to adjust my gathers, I can. It looks like I could take up a bit more. Again, even out my gathers and pin. Then I'm going to move to my back section. I'm going to pin my other side seam. And distribute my gathers. Looks like I can afford to pull a little bit more. And then we'll just go ahead and pin this last section. I'm going to fold my facing onto itself, onto my skirt. Pin. And now we're going to go ahead and sew across the entire section, joining our bodice to our skirt. Okay, we're going to backstitch to the beginning. Now you can go ahead and serge off your seam allowance, and when you turn this to the right side, you'll see that you have a nice clean finish on both sides. Now once you're done attaching your bodice to your skirt, then all you have left to do is to make your buttonholes, and you are all done. Alright guys, that's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed this sew along. Until next time, peace.